There's a pretty funny thing in this Hall of Trials rotation. If you take a look at Harseti's skills, when you look at Mana Restraint, heroes other than mages cannot gain focus. Now with Fern being a rate-up unit, this rotation being for both Frieren and Fern, they of course want to allow Fern to get her focus so she can get her bonus speed. But why only mages? What non-mage hero is Smallgate so scared of giving focus to? The answer to that is Serene Purity Addon. And Serene Purity Addon is just by far and away the highest damage dealing unit in Hall of Trials. We can take a look at the history, and you can see the highest scores are all from Ice Addon. You can see here 259, 269, and then 286, 289. The next highest one was this one, where we had the Infinite Loop on Young Xenia, where they never really expected people, I guess, to just spam non-attack skills and infinitely loop the game. This was pretty much just, they didn't account for the fact that that could be doable. And then the next one that comes closest is the Alexa rotation here. And nothing else really comes close. No other rotation even breaks 100 million. So why Ice Addon? What is it about her that makes her do so much? The answer is here on her S2. So when the ally with the highest attack starts their turn, she gets 1 focus, plus using S1 gives her 1 focus, and F5 focus after she attacks on her turn, so you can't activate it off turn, has to be on her turn. She'll use an extra attack and give Torrent to the ally with the highest attack. Now Torrent is a completely unique buff, she's the only person with this buff. After whoever has Torrent attacks with a basic skill, if it's a single target attack, they'll deal additional damage equivalent to 70% of the damage dealt to the target. Torrent is dispelled after attacking. Now this doesn't really seem like much, because a single target attack is, well, it has to be a basic skill too, so this kind of limits heroes a bit. It can't be any hero with an AoE S1, and then a basic skill is going to do less than a skill 3 typically. So the 70% extra damage, is this really making up for the gap between units' skill 1s and skill 3s? The reason this happens is because of a kind of funny interaction with the way damage dealt boost modifiers stack. So here, we can look at this rotation. It increases damage dealt by 7,000%. Now let's pretend that it works, and then Addon gives Frieren Torrent buff. Frieren uses S1, and her S1 is going to have her damage boosted by 7,000%. Now Torrent is going to proc on that 7,000%, and it'll only be 70% of the damage. So we get 70% of that S1 damage, which is just 7,000 times 0.7. So 4,900% of Frieren's S1 damage should activate as an extra damage proc. But the interesting thing is that this extra damage proc gets multiplied again by this 7,000 damage boost. So the Torrent procs always end up being some obscenely high number, and that's why the Torrent proc actually manages to outdamage skills like I would expect if she was available in this rotation, Frieren's S1 to just outdamage Frieren's S3, which might not necessarily be the case because she actually has a ton of defense in this rotation, but typically bosses have 0 defense, and that would pretty much be the case. And let's take a look at exactly how this works. So here we are, another Harseti rotation, funnily enough. Ice Addon here, she has her Torrent buff, it's the final hit of the break phase, she's fully stacked up, and actually the only reason Ice Addon even worked on this rotation is because it was the Tori rotation, so Thieves were the bonus, and usually this mana restraint prevents you from buffing other allies, but if Ice Addon's also the damage dealer, she can just give the Torrent buff to herself. One problem, I actually don't know what the damage boost was this rotation, but we can work backwards and we can figure it out. So let's take a look at the first hit. 5477118. Let's just write that down. 5477118. And then the proc here is 66820830. 66820830. So first things first, this is pretty much, so we know what this is, right? This is the hit times 0.7, because that's what Torrent is, and then that total amount should be multiplied by the boost. With the way Epic 7 does things, it stacks it on top of each other, so the number we're looking at should actually be this minus this, because it'll combine the two hits together. So this is the actual, this here is the actual damage coming from Torrent. So we can start off by just dividing this by 0.7. And now this is just the hit times the boost now. So we can just divide this by the hit, and we are left with the boost, which is a little, it's pretty much 16. It's close enough, which means that we know that the boost on this rotation for a fully stacked target weakness was 1,600%. And you can also see, like, well, because I reverse calculated it here, but the math completely lines up. It's double dipping the hit, which is just a funny interaction because the initial hit, which I guess we can kind of calculate here, it's just this divided by 16. The initial hit of about 342,000 damage gets boosted by the 1600% into this, and then when the Torrent procs, it becomes, the Torrent proc is this hit times 0.7, and then that again gets boosted by the 1600% to give us our total very large number of 66,000,000.8 damage in a single hit. And that is why by the end of this run, you end up seeing stuff like this, where you do over 100 million damage in a single hit, and the score gets pretty close to 300 million. And then while we're at it, here is the other time Ice Adden showed up in the very first rotation of the revamp, or not the first rotation, the first boss. It was the second and third rotation that she showed up. But here we have Guider Aether with the Torrent buff about to take his turn. Let's see how much damage this S1 does. 1357. We might as well calculate it again. 1357 433. 1357 433. And the proc 2606 2711. 2606 2711. And what did I do here? I just divided this by 0.7 and then divided this by this, which is giving me a kind of weird number because I think this rotation also had an additional damage boost modifier to extra damage procs, because this was designed for ML Luna. So that's why my number looks really weird, but we can still clearly see that there is a massive jump, like a big jump in number where you wouldn't expect there to be. But anyways, that is why certain bosses in Hall of Trials have their mechanics the way they do. It's why Abyssal Euphine seals, it's why Elena blocks focus, it's why Harsetti had mana restraint for isolation, not being able to buff allies, and now just has focus block too. That's why DDR blocks resources. It's largely because of Ice Adden, I would say. I don't think they'll make a mistake again, like they did with Tori, where there's a thief rotation and they forgot to block Ice Adden, because Harsetti was the only boss who didn't just like outright block her. She had mana, or she had isolation, which was something completely different. But now Harsetti blocks focus too, so I don't think they'll make that mistake again. It was nice having Adden while we did, though, and I, for one, hope they mess up again, because this unit is a little bit too fun to mess around with and get those high damage numbers.